For 500 years, every dominant empire believed it was untouchable, right up until the moment it wasn't. Spain ruled the oceans. Britain ruled the world. The Soviet Union ruled half the planet, and each of them collapsed fast, dramatically, and in the exact same 7-stage sequence. What if I told you the United States has already traveled through 5 of those 7 stages, and the remaining 2 are the most violent, the most chaotic, and the most historically irreversible? This isn't prophecy. This isn't prediction. This is pattern rise and fall of superpowers across half a millennium. Every empire believes it is exceptional. Every empire thinks history won to apply to Italiano. Every empire ignores the warning signs until it's too late. Today, America is repeating a pattern that destroyed every empire before it. But to understand where the United States is headed, we need to understand where the previous empires went wrong. Let's begin where the pattern began. Spain. Spain wasn't just rich. It was the richest empire Earth had ever seen. By the 1600s, Spain controlled the world's silver supply. Entire mines in the Americas shipped treasure across the Atlantic. Mountains of wealth poured in so fast that Spain believed the good times would never end. But Spain made the same mistake every superpower makes at its peak. Asterisk. Asterisk. It replaced productivity with plunder. It replaced work with wealth. And then the wealth destroyed it. Asterisk. Asterisk. Silver flooded the Spanish economy, triggering the world's first hyperinflation cycle. Prices doubled, tripled, then quadrupled within a single generation. Spain stopped building. It stopped innovating. It stopped producing anything of real value. The government became dependent on easy money, and then it became addicted to it. Debt exploded, wars drained the treasury. Nobles lived on borrowed wealth, and the empire rotted from the inside out. The same silver that made Spain powerful became the very reason it collapsed. The pattern had begun. If Spain was the first modern superpower, Britain was the greatest dot. At its peak, Britain controlled 25% of the world's land and 20% of its population. Its navy dominated the seas. The British pound was the global reserve currency. But Britain, like Spain, followed the same 7 stages: expansion, overreach, debt, decline, collapse. World War I pushed Britain into massive debt. World War II finished the job. By 1954, the empire was gone. By 1971, the pound had permanently lost reserve currency status. Britain had become a regional power, no longer a global one. What destroyed Britain wasn't just war. It was the same structural weaknesses we saw in Spain: debt, currency decline, loss of productive capacity, and military overstretch. But the most shocking fall was yet to come. USSR didn't collapse slowly like Spain. It didn't fade like Britain. From the outside, the Soviet Union looked invincible. A nuclear arsenal, a massive military, a global sphere of influence, a planned economy that seemed unstoppable. But on the inside, it was hollow productivity, collapsed. Debt soared. Currency value evaporated. Social trust broke down. Ethnic tensions ripped the state apart. When the internal pressure became too much, the collapse was instantaneous. In less than 1,000 days, the USSR went from a superpower to a collection of fragmented states. The pattern had repeated itself again, the 7-stage pattern, the blueprint of collapse. The fall of every empire follows this exact series. 1. Military overextension. Empires expand too far, spending more on war than on their own people. 2. Currency debasement. Easy money becomes policy. The currency weakens. 3. Debt explosion. Borrowing becomes the lifeline that keeps the illusion of strength alive. 4. Loss of productive capacity. Manufacturing declines. Outsourcing begins. Innovation slows. 5. Social decay. Internal trust collapses. Division rises. Stability disappears. 6. Reserve currency loss. The world stops trusting the empire's money. 7. Sudden collapse. The system breaks fast and violently. Spain completed the pattern. Britain completed the pattern. The USSR completed the pattern. And now, America is deep into stage 5. With stage 6 already forming on the horizon. Look at the pattern. Massive military spending. Record debt. currency dilution, declining manufacturing, social fragmentation, political paralysis, global moves away from the dollar. The United States has hit every marker that Spain, Britain, and the USSR hit just before they fell. But America has one more dangerous similarity. Asterisk. Asterisk, it believes it is the exception, just like every other empire did. Asterisk, in the next part, we'll break down exactly how America moved through each stage step by step over the last 50 years. You will see the pattern. You will see the timeline. You will see the point of no return. And most importantly, you will see what comes next. Every empire collapses for different surface reasons. But the pattern underneath is always the same. And when you apply that pattern to the United States, the timeline becomes unmistakable. To understand how close America is to the final stages, we must trace step by step how the world's most powerful nation moves through the first 5 stages of imperial decline. This is not politics. This is not ideology. This is historical pattern mapping. And history leaves a perfect paper trail. Let's begin where America's modern decline starts. 1971. In 1971, the United States did something no empire in history had ever done. It tried to maintain global military dominance without maintaining global financial discipline. Vietnam was the turning point. America was spending billions. Monthly money it didn't have fighting a war it wasn't winning, for a strategic goal it couldn't clearly define. This was the moment the U.S. shifted from growth to overreach. By the 1980s, America had 700 military bases. By the 2000s, 2 major wars were being fought simultaneously. By the 2020s, the U.S. was spending more on its military than the next 10 countries combined. No empire in history has ever survived this level of military outreach. Spain didn't. Britain didn't. The Soviet Union didn't. And neither will America unless this trajectory changes dramatically. But stage 1 only becomes deadly when stage 2 begins. In the same year, military spending skyrocketed. Something even more important happened. America left the gold standard. For the first time in U.S. history, the dollar was backed by nothing but trust. This was the moment the dollar became an abstraction, a political tool instead of a store of value. And once a currency becomes a tool, it inevitably becomes a weapon. And once it becomes a weapon, it becomes unstable. After 1971, the money supply exploded. Inflation became permanent. Dollar strength became artificial. Wealth inequality began rising at its fastest pace in history. Empires always debase their currency when they can't pay for their wars. Spain printed silver. Britain printed pounds. The Soviet Union printed rubles. America printed dollars. And every empire that debased its currency entered. Stage 3. After currency debasement, something predictable happens. Debt becomes the engine of the economy. In 1980, U.S. national debt was $900 billion. In 2000, it crossed $5 trillion. In 2010, it crossed $12 trillion. In 2020, it crossed $23 trillion. In 2024, it crossed $34 trillion. And it is rising by $1 trillion every 100 days. This is not growth. This is not stability. This is not strength. This is stage 3, the point at which an empire becomes financially trapped. The U.S. can no longer reduce spending, politically impossible, raise taxes. Economically, self-destructive, cut entitlements, socially explosive, cut the military, geopolitically suicidal. So it does the only thing left. Print, borrow, inflate. Repeat. Repeat. This is exactly what Spain and Britain did before they collapsed. But debt alone doesn't destroy an empire. The collapse accelerates when the productive base erodes. In the early 2000s, something catastrophic and irreversible happened. The U.S. began outsourcing its industrial base. Factories closed. Manufacturing moved overseas. Supply chains shifted to Asia. Entire American towns collapsed. Millions of workers were displaced. Skills evaporated. Industries died. By 2020, the U.S. could no longer produce its own medicines, its own electronics, its own rare earth minerals, even its own military components. No empire survives after it loses the ability to produce at home. Spain stopped producing food. Britain stopped producing manufacturing goods. The USSR stopped producing consumer goods. America stopped producing everything except debt. When a nation consumes more than it produces, the decline is already mathematically locked in. And when production collapses, something else collapses with it, the society itself. Empires die from within long before they die from without. In this days, historical symptoms always look the same. Polarization, institutional distrust, declining birth rates, rising crime, cultural fragmentation, political extremism, economic despair, loss of social cohesion, collapse of common identity, anger replacing unity, fear replacing optimism, division replacing purpose. America today fits this stage perfectly. Half the nation distrusts government. The other half distrusts each other. Social media amplifies division. Politics resembles civil conflict. Civic trust is near zero. Productive dialogue has died. Communities have fractured. National unity has evaporated. Every empire that reached this point collapsed. Spain tore itself apart through civil wars. Britain saw riots, strikes, and class division. The Soviet Union fragmented ethnically and politically. America is now in identical conditions. But here's what makes the US different and more vulnerable. It holds the world's reserve currency. And once a reserve currency shows weakness, the collapse accelerates. That is where Stage 6 begins. We now approach the most dangerous part of the pattern. Stage 6 is when foreign nations lose trust in the dollar, global trade seeks alternatives, reserve currency cracks appear. Debt can no longer be inflated away, interest payments devour, the budget foreign holders begin dumping. US debt inflation becomes unstoppable. The empire faces consequences it can't escape. And history shows, once Stage 6 starts, collapse is not decades away. It is years away. Every empire follows the same 7 stages. And the last 2 are not gradual. They are not political. They are not reversible, that they are events sudden, violent, and historically absolute. America has completed 5 of the 7 stages. Now we step into the final 2, TCR stages no empire has ever escaped. This is the most critical turning point in the entire collapse pattern. As long as the world trusts your currency, you can borrow forever. You can print without consequence. You can run deficits. No nation could survive. You can wage wars no economy can afford. You can sustain living standards far above your productivity level. Reserve currency status is not just privilege. It is oxygen. Once it goes, the empire suffocates and fast. And today, the warning signs are no longer subtle. BRICS nations building non-dollar trade systems. China and Russia abandoning the dollar for energy. Saudi Arabia accepting non-dollar oil payments. Central banks buying record levels of gold. Dollar reserves shrinking globally. Nations diversifying away from US debt. The world reducing reliance on the US financial system. This is exactly what happened to Britain after World War II. Exactly what happened to Spain after its silver inflation. Exactly what the USSR never achieved, causing even faster collapse. When America reaches full Stage 6, something predictable occurs. Trillions of dollars held overseas come flooding back into the US. THIs triggers the event that destroys every collapsing empire. Hyperinflation, currency crisis, sovereign debt crisis. And when the world stops needing the dollar, Stage 7 begins. History shows collapse is not a slow fade. It is a chain reaction. Currency crisis, debt defaults, political meltdown, institutional failure, social unrest, loss of global influence, rapid geopolitical retreat. Spain lost everything in less than 1 generation. Britain lost its empire in under 20 years. The Soviet Union collapsed in 900 days. And the United States will be no different if it enters this stage fully. This doesn't mean America disappears. It means America transforms. A superpower becomes a nation. A global empire becomes a regional actor. A currency becomes one option among many. A military becomes limited by funding. A lifestyle becomes redefined by reality. Collapse is not the end of a country. It is the end of an era, yes, but only through changes no empire has ever successfully made at this stage. Cutting military outreach, restoring industrial capacity, reducing debt addiction, rebuilding institutional trust, strengthening social unity, restructuring the financial system, reinforcing the dollar before it fractures. No empire has ever reversed all these simultaneously. But America is the first with the technology, innovation, and global networks to attempt it. History is not destiny, but ignoring history always leads to the same destiny. Spain collapsed. Britain collapsed. The Soviet Union collapsed. All three follow the identical 7-stage sequence, and the United States has already completed 5. The final 2 stages are not warnings, they are forecasts. And once Stage 6 begins fully, Stage 7 follows with historical certainty. Understanding the pattern isn't fear, it's preparation, it's clarity, it's awareness. Because empires don't collapse in centuries. They collapse in a moment, the moment they believe they never will.